Greetings everyone, Archimedes here, and welcome back to another Brickfield LEGO video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a kind of tricky concept involving some simple machines. And that simple machine is the lever. Now, I'm sure all of you maybe know a little bit how levers work. They're kind of like catapults, right? You know, push the one end and the other end goes up, right? Well, yes and no. Yes, that is one class of lever. In fact, it's called a first-class lever, and that's the one we're most familiar with. However, there are two other classes of levers, and just as a kind of physics terminology thing, I think you should be acquainted with these terms. And so thus, today, we're going to be taking a look at three classes of lever. First class, second class, and third class, and some demonstrations of them in real life. So let's take a look, shall we? Now, before we get into the three classes of levers and really their amazing purposes, I'd like to first explain a little bit of terminology. Now, the first and most important thing I would say in a lever is the fulcrum. That's going to be represented by this little yellow triangle here. Now, the fulcrum of a lever is the point at which the lever turns on, right? And I think that makes sense. I think you probably all already know what this word means, right? So the fulcrum is the thing that the lever bends on. So if this black bar is the lever itself, it rocks back and forth on the fulcrum. Second, we have the load, which will be represented by this lovely little red block. Now, the load is the thing that the lever is trying to fight. It's the purpose or the effect it's trying to have on something. So, for example, on a teeter-totter, right? You have one kid on this side and one kid on this side. If you want this kid to move, this load to be moved, you have to put an effort on this side to lift the load. However, the load is the thing you are trying to move, all right? Now, some engineers would also call this resistance, and I think both terms kind of work. I personally prefer load because of the way I think of load. Structures try to support loads, but if resistance works better for you, I understand. Just please note that I will use load using this in this video. Finally, we have effort, and effort is going to be indicated by this little arrow pointing in the direction the effort is going. Now, the effort is what you put into the lever to move the load. So, if the load is the thing you fight, the effort is the energy that you put in to move that thing. Make sense? Still not clear? Well, I think it will if you're still a little uncomfortable with it, just continue watching, and I think you'll pick it up as we go. Now, on to the first class of lever. Now, first-class levers are the ones that we probably recognize the most. In a first-class lever, the fulcrum is in the center, the effort is on one side, and the load is on the other. I think we see these all the time. I've said before, like a teeter-totter, you push the effort in one direction, and the load goes in the opposite direction. A demo for this would be a catapult. Now, as you can see, with pretty much every catapult design on the planet, it is a first-class lever. There is the load, the projectile on one side, the effort, what you take to launch the projectile on the other side, and the fulcrum, the point at which the lever turns. And I think we've seen this one all the time, but I suggest you build one of these yourselves and shoot some projectiles across your room because, frankly, it's fun. Next, we have the second-class lever. Now, second-class levers are a little different than first-class levers. Here, as you can see, the load is square in the middle, or in the center, in between the fulcrum and the effort. The effort is on one side, and the fulcrum is on the other. A demo, or a real-life experience that you might have with a second-class lever, would be a wheelbarrow. As you can see here, with the wheelbarrow, the fulcrum is clearly the tire, which is on one end, right? The load is whatever you're carrying in the wheelbarrow in the center, and the effort is what it takes to lift that wheelbarrow. Finally, we have the third class lever. Now, with a third class lever, once again, the fulcrum is on the end as opposed to the middle, like a second class lever. However, in a third class lever, this time the effort is in the center and the load is on the end, like this. Now, in my opinion, the third class lever is the hardest to see in the real world, but there actually are a million examples of third class levers. Your arms, your legs, a whole bunch of different joints are third class levers. But I'll give you at least one real world demo that I know you've used, at least if you live in the Midwest. Now, my demo for a third class lever is a shovel. Now, if you've ever used a shovel before, and I'm pretty sure you have, especially if you've ever shoveled snow, you'll know that when you try to scoop up your load, your snow or whatever you're trying to lift, you hold fairly stable one end of the shovel, and your other arm grabs the center of the shovel to lift and throw the snow or other item. Since this back arm really doesn't do much of the effort, it's the fulcrum. The middle arm is the effort, and of course, the weight on the end is the load, thus making a shovel a third class lever. Now, if you want to be confused, you can think of a shovel as also as a first class lever. After all, if you hold stationary at the center of the lever and put your effort on the end, it becomes a first class lever, clearly, right? Since the fulcrum is in the center and the effort's on the end. However, that's usually for the second step of snow throwing, which is using your shovel as a catapult and throwing it on your neighbors. But I don't suggest you do that. That tends to end badly. However, for most demonstrations and most uses of a shovel, one uses a shovel to scoop like a third class lever. If you come to think of it, most sports tools and most weapons are also third class levers. After all, you hold them steady with your wrist at the very end of them. However, you then provide an effort in the middle, which in turn moves the end, the load, smacking the ball, or slicing off your opponent's head with the sword or axe or mace. But how exactly do I remember all of this? I mean, yes, why is it important? And we'll get to that in a second. But first, how do I remember these semi-interesting pieces of information? How do I remember that a first-class lever has the fulcrum in the middle, and the second-class lever has the load in the middle, and a third-class lever has the effort in the middle? How do I remember that? Well, I actually just kind of said it right there. Remembering the classes of levers is as easy as FLE 1, 2, 3. If you remember, in a first-class lever, the fulcrum is in the center. In a second-class lever, the load, and in a third-class lever, the effort is in the center. If you can simply remember FLE 1, 2, 3, as I'm pretty sure you can, you know exactly what is in the center for every lever. The fulcrum is in the center for a first-class lever, the load is in the center for a second-class lever, and the effort is in the center for a third-class lever. Okay, now, you say, Arci, that's brilliant and all. I now know how to classify 3 types of levers. Yippee! Maybe this'll help me in my college simple machines class if I'm an engineer. Otherwise, why did you write a video on this? Well, I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons why I wrote this video is because I'm a simple machine nerd. I learned about these things when I was like 8 in a really awesome book called David McCloy's The Way Things Work. It was really cool. I love it, and I think you should check it out because you can learn a lot. Plus, there's some awesome and really cute depictions of mammoths doing work. However, these machines, this basic classification, is really just explaining to you about something incredibly amazing. And that is the lever. Now, I think you'd like me to get on to the juicy stuff, right? No more random tags and titles. You want to know, why do I use levers? Now, you actually probably can answer that question yourself, kind of, sort of. But bear with me for a second, and I'll try to give you a pretty complete answer. Long story short, a lever is a simple machine. And a simple machine is something that exploits physics to make work easier. And isn't that great? That's what we all look for. We look for cheats. Well, then you could call a lever a cheat in the real world. The way that a lever exploits physics was actually invented by my namesake Archimedes, this time Archimedes spelled with an H, of Syracuse. What Archimedes discovered is actually found in a nice long algebraic sequence, MA equals F to the B subscript over F to the A subscript, which equals A over B. However, what that really means, all that fancy math, is simply this. If the distance in between the force, the effort, and the fulcrum is greater than the distance in between the load and the fulcrum, the effort will be increased by the lever. So what that means is this. If the distance is greater in between the fulcrum and the effort than the fulcrum and the load, you can lift more weight with this lever than you would with the normal effort, just lifting the normal weight on your own. So that means levers are a life hack, right? Well, kind of, sort of, yeah. Levers are designed to make your work easier. As long as there is a greater distance between the thing your effort to the fulcrum than the thing you're lifting to the fulcrum, you will have more strength. That's why you're able to carry greater loads in a wheelbarrow than carrying them normally. The distance in between the fulcrum and your effort is greater than the distance between the fulcrum and your load. If you use these same levers that help you move things, heavier things in your life, in your Lego models, you can make those Lego models stronger as well. You think about the simple Lego piece, right? Defenseless, weak, innocent, barely able to support itself. Well, actually not a lot like that at all. Legos are actually pretty sturdy. However, Legos and Lego motors especially aren't that strong. However, if you line them up with the power of some levers, you can expand the power of that motor, or your force, or the thing that you're trying to move, exponentially. Isn't this awesome? Levers enable you to make your Lego models so much stronger, so much more powerful, and, as you can see here, they just look plain awesome. For today, we talked about levers. In particular, we talked about the three classes of levers. First class levers, which have the fulcrum in the center, the effort on one side, and the load on the other. Second class levers, which have the load in the middle, and the fulcrum and effort on the outsides. And finally, third class levers, which have the effort in the center, and the load and the fulcrum on the outside. We now remember that in order to remember those three classes of letters, all you have to remember is FLE 1, 2, 3, or force in the center for first class lever, load in the center for second class lever, and effort in the center for third class lever. Then we briefly talked about why one uses levers. How, if the distance in between the fulcrum and the effort is greater than the different distance in between the fulcrum and the load, the force or the effort used is amplified. This means that levers make things stronger, give you more power, and enable you to generally make stronger, better, faster, and more awesome Lego machines. Oh, and you also learned that Archimedes is just a little bit of a simple machines nerd and really loves this stuff a bit too much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you liked this video. I hope that it was interesting or informative, or at least that it entertained you for a little while. If you did in fact like this video, please comment, rate, or subscribe. If you didn't like this video, still please comment and rate, and if you really want, still please subscribe too. The point is, I want to hear what you have to say would make my videos and my channel different and better. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you all farewell. My name is Arcimedes36, and I'll see you next time.